Okay, great. It is 6:30 on February 3rd. This is our committee meeting. The board is meeting as a committee of the whole. I call this meeting to order. Let's get to work. All right. We have presentations. Auditor? Oh, great. Okay, great.
Yes. Hello. How's everyone doing?
Good evening.
Yeah, I have a presentation. Just my name's Alex. While I wait for it to get pulled up, my name's Alex. I'm the manager on the district's audit with Barbara King Thornton, and I'll go through kind of how the year went and how the audit went. So, yes, let's. We go. Cool. So if you want to go forward, I believe it's probably 2 slides. So as I said, I'm presenting on the results of the fiscal year 25 audit. So just keep in mind, everything you're going to hear is about 6 to 8 months old. So we're well into fiscal year 26 now. So kind of put that time machine cap back on and kind of go back in the past a little bit. We were on site doing our work in October and early November. We issued final audit reports early to mid-January, and the single audit for the district has been filed and submitted with the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. Next slide, please. For the audit, oh, sorry, go back one. Thank you. For the audit, we follow auditing standards generally accepted in the United States, as well as government auditing standards. Management is responsible for the financial statements and the internal controls relevant to the preparation of those financial statements. And our responsibility as the auditor is to obtain reasonable assurance as to whether those financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with the applicable accounting basis. I'm pleased to report we issued an unmodified or clean audit opinion for fiscal year 25, and there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls reported. Next slide, please. Thank you. Our audit is designed to target areas of greater risk. And kind of how we do this is through a number of different steps. We talk to individuals. We look at documentation of the internal controls. I will review historical data, trend data, budget versus actual, review the minutes for the year for the board meetings, any contracts entered into during the year, any agreements, bond documents, all of that kind of fun stuff. And that kind of informs what we'll look at in our substantive procedures, which is kind of what you think of when you think of an audit, looking at invoices, looking at checks, all that kind of fun stuff. Quickly, a very high-level overview of kind of how the year ended for your governmental funds. So first, you'll see kind of year over year how net fund balance changed for each fund. The general fund decreased about $3.9 million from last year, and the capital projects about 11.1 from last year. And really the main driver of that is the construction on the high school in 25. There's a lot of big expenditures that this year, and kind of drove an expected cost for fiscal year 25. Of the $12 million of remaining general fund balance, $990,000 of that was committed for future operations. $534,000 was non-spendable, which means it was sitting in a prepaid expense at the end of the year. And 3.3 was assigned for future use. Next slide, please. And then quickly, just want to touch on some of the budgetary highlights for 25. Revenue came in over budget by about, or yeah, exceeded budget by $1.8 million from expected, mainly due to increases in taxes, both real estate delinquent and Act 511, as well as some increases in state and federal sources. And interest income was a little stronger this year, but that's always the interest is always a gamble. You never know how the whole year is going to go. Expenditures came in lower than budgeted by about $146,000 before any transfers to the capital or debt service funds. The cap or yeah, let's say it now. The general fund transferred about $11.5 million to capital and debt service. About 5.5 million of that was to the debt service fund, which was budgeted for. And then an additional 6 million was transferred to capital projects to cover some of those costs for the construction during the year. Included in that, in the capital fund, was also a $9 million bond issuance to kind of help offset some of those costs, or fund, I should say, fund some of those costs. And then finally, the general fund presented a budget deficit of about $812,000. The actual is about 3.9, largely due to, like I said, that year end or during the year transfer to the capital projects fund of about $6 million. And then next slide, please. And quickly touch on the food service fund, kind of business as usual here. Fund balance increased $150,000 from last year, just due to current year funding and results from sales during the year. And then quickly, the PSERS and OPEB liability, or PSERS liabilities for OPEB and pension for the year. As you know, these are the large liabilities you kind of see on that statement of net position for this district's portion of the PSERS OPEB and pension liabilities for the year. Pension liability was about $43.7 million this year, a decrease of about $4.3 million. OPEB was around 4.3, which is an increase of about $14,000. The district made all required payments. These liabilities are kind of there to show the district's portion, but there's not an expectation for the district to pay these out in the future. Just kind of what your buy-in, so to speak, is of that liability. And we kind of see over the last couple of years that PSERS funding percentage has been climbing, so the liability has been shrinking. We're kind of hoping that it's been leveling out. So we're kind of hoping that stays the course. Next slide, please. The district had a number of capital assets and leases during the year. The total capital assets is about $97 million, which is an increase of about 31.5 from last year. Majority of that, as I said earlier, are the increases in construction and process for the high school project. So there's $33.5 million of additions, offset by about $2 million in depreciation this year. And then the district also reported lease and subscription liabilities of about $172,000 combined. Next slide. And part of the required communications for the audit, there's no disagreements or difficulties with management during the audit process. Leanne and Linda, their team was super helpful, super forthcoming, quick to respond with any inquiries or questions we had. Super helpful as always. A pleasure to work with. We got full cooperation, as I just said. There's no material audit entries, and these results are reviewed with them kind of throughout the process and then before final issuance as well. And then I believe this is the last slide. During the year, since the district expended more than $750,000 of federal funds, we were required to do what's called a single audit on federal programs. for the year. The only slight hiccup, which really didn't impact the timing of this audit, was the Office of Management and Budget was delayed in issuing their 2025 uniform grant guidance, which is what we use to perform the single audit. But I guess it didn't really impact the timing of this audit, but just so everyone's aware that if in the future they're delayed again, it could potentially have timeline impacts, but we're not expecting that in the future. So basically what we do is we take a look at a specific program each year. We usually rotate through a cycle of the 2 or 3 biggest programs. This year, I believe it was Title I and IDEA we looked at. This is a separate audit from the financial statements where we look at compliance with these grants and those compliance requirements as explained by OMB. And we look at them kind of the same way as the audit, where we look at internal controls, kind of how the procurement's handled, how the federal funds are handled, and make sure everything's good. And then like I said, I believe this is the last slide, but we issued a clean or unmodified opinion on compliance with federal awards as well. So everything's operating effectively there. And in our opinion, materially correct. So yeah, and then I believe that's the last slide if you want to check. Yep. So then I guess quickly, I'll open up for any questions anyone might have, any comments.
All right, thank you. Any questions on the board? I assume we have this document. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, second report is a secondary update. Mr. Wagner.
Good evening, everyone. So we wanted to come and give a little bit of information about what's going on at the secondary school at this point. You can just go right to the next slide right away, Kirk. So the first thing I'll talk about is our student leader and mentor group, which I know, is it 2 years ago that Mrs. Tavani and I presented to this group on the student leaders and mentors. And so that group is growing and doing really well. The first group that we originally recruited for that are now 11th graders. So they're continuing to go up through. So I just want to share a little update on what they're doing. Recently, we had a workshop for them on how to lead through active listening. That went really well. In fact, Mrs. Bruce led that workshop, and the students had an opportunity to really kind of practice some active listening skills and recognize where that goes. I'm realizing now I'm a slide ahead, so let's go back and talk about the farm show for a second. The farm show, I wanted to give a little perspective on how amazing our FFA program is. So I had a conversation at our in-service a couple weeks ago on MLK Day with Mrs. Bolts about, she sent an email out to all the staff about all of the awards the kids won. And it was overwhelming to read it because it was hard to understand the specifics of what some of the awards went. So I just asked her to break it down for me, help me understand this in layman's terms a little bit. And this is the stat that I think is pretty amazing. So that second bullet point there, 16 students got the Keystone degree. That is the most difficult, the way she explained it to me, that is the most intense, difficult award for an FFA member to get. It requires something like 300 hours of experience on something. There's a community service piece. There's a whole bunch of things that go into that. And to give you some perspective on 16 students receiving that award from NL, the previous school that Mrs. Bolts was at in her capacity as an ag teacher had 280 students in the ag program, and 1 student got that award. We have about 160 students in our program. We had 16 receive that award this year. So that gives you some idea about the terrific job Mrs. Balmer and Mrs. Bolts are doing with our program and the hard work of the kids in terms of what they were able to do at the farm show this year. And there's a couple other statistics on there, but we had a very, very successful year at the farm show with our FFA program. So, okay, you can go to the next slide. So this is where I was earlier, the student leaders and mentors group. They had a little bit of training in some active listening skills. And we're also utilizing them for our new after-school academic support program. So Monday through Thursday, we were able to get in place to have a teacher available for an hour after school We were often getting requests from parents about, well, is there any, tutoring that my student can go to? They're struggling with X class, can they stay after school? And we have a lot of teachers that are willing to do that on their own, but we wanted to have something a little bit more structured that's available on a regular basis. And so Monday through Thursday for that hour after school, and then students can take the activity bus home. This structured time is there. Well, they're partnering with the SLAM group, where we're getting SLAM students that are willing to stay a day a week or a day every 2 weeks to work with students, younger students, on tutoring, whether it's some area that they're skilled in, whether it's math or English or whatever subject matter. So we're working on getting kind of a regular schedule. I don't know that we're at the point yet where we have a SLAM student available every single Monday through Thursday, but we're working through that to kind of bring that on board and give the SLAM students another opportunity to exercise that leadership. And it's a nice, if they're going for honor society hours or somewhere where they need community service hours, they can double dip there and get that there as well. So, okay, you can go to the next slide. Renovations, we're almost there, right? We're almost there. If everything goes according to plan, the Tuesday after President's Day weekend, every teacher will be in their final destination classroom, which is pretty amazing. A few weeks ahead of schedule. I think we were originally thinking that would be beginning of March-ish. So if everything stays where it is right now, every teacher will be in their final destination on that Tuesday after President's Day. So that's great. Obviously, there's punch list things that'll still need to be done, but we've had some superstar teachers that have been so flexible in being moved, 1, 2, some even 3 times over the last 3 years. So they're very much looking forward to that. This is my final destination. This is my classroom. I can make it how I want it to look. And so we're excited about that. The staff is excited about that. We're working on some plans right now for March 2nd is an in-service day for some kind of celebration, end of renovation pieces that we're going to do with the staff. So we were just brainstorming actually this afternoon some ideas on some of the things we might do that day, and activities. So we're almost there. We're almost there. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Cell phone policy. Just to give you an update on where we are with the cell phone policy, this is a graph of the violations that we've had since the beginning of the school year. So you can see, obviously, the decrease. Taking into account November, December is only 3 weeks. They're 3-week months. But January, we had a couple of snow days in there, but you can see January was basically a full month, and the decrease has continued across the board. It's amazing to see students talking to each other in the hallway as they transition from class to class. At lunch, we got some board games and have a little cabinet that they can get board games out at lunches, and we see kids playing various board games at lunch. And so we're seeing the great effects of having them get that additional socialization of not being every time they have an opportunity to be in their phone. So those are the numbers of the violations. We just wanted to kind of give you an update so you could see where we're at with that. Okay, and then I think the last slide, believe it or not, we're only about 2 months away from PSSAs and Keystones starting up. So we just wanted to kind of give you an update. We're really starting to gear up for getting ready for those things. We're kind of folding in the John Alma Road clarity pieces into teachers focusing on eligible content and specific things to help prepare the students for the test. We're doing the Firefly administration. That'll start next week for our 3rd version of that, to have another data point for teachers to be able to look at and see if there are specific areas that they can focus on as we get into the final stretch before we get to the testing. And really in everything we've been doing this year at the secondary building, but specifically in this area of PSSA, Keystone preparation, and eligible content, we're focusing on those 3 questions that John Alma Road asked. What do I want students to learn? Why do I want them to learn it? And how will I know if they've learned it? And we're really incorporating that not just into teacher lesson plans each day. We're asking those questions and demonstrating those questions when we have a faculty meeting or when we have other meetings. We're trying to incorporate that really into the mentality and the culture of how we think as a secondary building. And if we focus on those 3 things, a lot of the other things will kind of come into line from there. So that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Go ahead.
I have a question about thinking about the cell phone policy. I love the positive. I'm hearing the positive, but I'm also hearing some negative. So I'm just wondering, I'm sure you're hearing the same negative that I'm hearing. I would think. So I don't know if you can speak to some of that or if you want me to.
Is there a specific question on the negative, Director Murray?
Well, I think probably this specific question would be around the response to an infraction versus a response to a different infraction. Like there's not things aren't weighted quite the same from a disciplinary standpoint and how that is impacting things. So I wonder if you can speak to
I
that.
think that I appreciate
And I
that question.
realize
And
I'm putting you on
no,
the
that's okay. That's
spot.
okay. And honestly, and Mrs. Hogg is here tonight, so we're the two that do the most with the, the discipline piece with this, along with our dean of students. But I think that question was probably pretty appropriate to ask in October. But we, as we go through, we're having conversations with parents along the way well, why is it this steep, if you will, on the first offense? And helping the students understand the importance of why this is, and it's such a huge change from where we were in the past of having the middle school was basically what we are now, what we have now, but the high school was more of a little bit more loose in terms of the policy. But as we have those conversations with parents, most parents are saying, "Yep, I get it. I don't, I think that this might," but we're also not seeing, and I didn't put the data up there, but like of those infractions, we have a core group of students who are still struggling that have a second or third or fourth infraction, but very few are actually going to that second infraction. There's that first thing, and then it's okay. I know that they're taking this seriously. So to answer the question clearly, I think having a consequence that is serious enough for students to understand this is not, we're taking this seriously. This matters. Your learning matters. We need you to make sure that you understand that a cell phone is distracting you from your learning. So therefore, this is not something that we can accept. We've had very few repeat offenders, except for, like I said, a core group. And I think the seriousness of the consequence is helping to enforce that this isn't something. Whereas, if we had it set up in a, well, first offense, you turn it in for a day, and then the second offense, if it was a progressive, the students probably would not be taking it as seriously as they are. And you can see the evidence of the infractions going down. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm still kind of grappling with I see the benefit of it, but I still think there's probably some other behaviors that we're not hitting as hard that are also impeding education. So I just, yeah.
And just for those few that get to the second infraction or beyond, we're not just adding days on of the suspension. It's okay, now you're getting the suspension and you're going to turn your phone in for the next 4 days or 5 days at the beginning of the day. So it's the intention is not to take students out of class for long periods of time. The intention is to help them understand the importance of of not having their cell phones. And then for those further infractions, you get this consequence, and in addition, you also turn it in for X amount of time.
So Director Murray, is your question more of, is your concern that we are enforcing the cell phone restriction too heavily, or that maybe we're not being firm enough on other non-device related issues?
Yeah, I think the second one is probably more my concern. And I mean, I think we're being so effective with it, which is great. And I realize when we're looking at a particular, we're looking at a particular behavior, cell phone usage, and we're saying we're doing really well with this. And I see that. But I mean, I don't know, maybe if we took another behavior and analyzed that, I don't know. I mean, but yeah, I think we're doing well with it, and I appreciate what you guys are doing, because I think it's working, and clear by the evidence. I just wonder if there's other behaviors that are
Simply
getting a
put,
pass at some point.
the time spent on cell phone, is that impacting our ability or time to spend on other things? But I will also say, and I think this is a piece that maybe you can talk to, I get the major incidents. We see the major incidents. I don't see the little things, but I see the major incidents. Our major incidents seem to be very much down compared to what I've seen in the past. You know, some of the, if you remember as a board a couple of years ago, when we were talking about fights in bathrooms and hallways and the video, of course, the video is directly related to the, but a lot of the major types of things, problems that we were having, this policy and the enforcement of this policy seem to have reduced those. But again, simply put, is the time that we have to spend on cell phones, is that hurting our ability to address other behaviors, I guess is maybe the heart of your question.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, it's hard, you can't capture it all, and I get that. And, you know, kids are kids. People are people, humans are humans. So, yeah, I get that you can't eliminate it all. I get it, but.
And I don't have specific data in front of me in terms
Yeah.
of what Dr. Messinger is pointing out, but I think, you know, from a doing it every day standpoint, I would agree that I think the major incidents are down. And there is a direct correlation to other incidents, right? So when students were allowed to have their phones at lunch, that led to us having, oh, so-and-so took a picture of so-and-so and posted it on social media. And then we had to deal with that discipline piece. That doesn't, I mean, that basically doesn't happen anymore. And so those other side incidents that we would kind of get bogged down with investigating, that's not, you know, that's a very small factor at this point compared to what it was in previous years because of the ability to have the phones in the hallways or have the phones at lunch and in those situations.
This really is putting you on the spot, and I'm sorry for that, but you know, we pursued this in terms of culture and in terms of learning. Two questions, I guess. Do you have a sense for, have you sensed students positively reacting to not having devices? Are you hearing any of that? And then second part of that question is, are you able to assess whether it is actually having a positive impact on the learning environment?
So the first question, very few students are going to admit to you that it's having that it's being effective because they want to have their phones. But the reality of it is, you know, in seeing, there's not a whole lot of at this point of the year. I mean, you saw the referrals. Like at this point of the year, students know what the expectation is, and there's very little of, oh man, I'm going to push the envelope to see what I can do here. And when we have when we're talking to a student, every one of those conversations is, do you understand why we're having this conversation? It's not that we don't want you to have your phone. It's that we want you to be in the best position to learn. And I will often pull, my phones are back there, but I will often pull my phone out and say, you see this? I have notifications of deer pictures from my tree stand. I have a text message from my wife. I get it. The struggle's real. And when I feel that thing vibrating in my pocket, the first thing I want to do is look at it. I understand. Our job is to make sure you're in the best position to learn. And we know that if the struggle is real, that when that thing's in your pocket, it's going to distract you from learning in the environment, which is why it has to be in your backpack on silent or turned off. And you know, when we're having those conversations, a lot of times the kids are like, well, I get it. But, you know, then they're like, but why can't I have it in the hallway? Or why can't, you know, then they ask the next question, which then we explain to them why that is a factor as well. So having those conversations as students kind of come through has really helped them to kind of see, this isn't just, we're trying to get you, we're trying to keep this from you. We don't want you to have fun. There's reasoning behind this, there's data behind this. This is in your best interest. And I think at least the students that we've talked to in those situations, very few of them are like, yeah, but that's still dumb. I want my phone. Like, they're getting why, you know, what we're saying. So as far as the culture goes, as far as the overall learning environment, I guess there's still a TBD aspect of that. We'll see, you know, as we get to the testing window. But teachers are very thankful to have they're thankful to you guys that they don't, there's no gray area. It's a very simple, if you have it out, we have a conversation, why did you have it out? We do the referral, and then the kid come, then we talk to us. And that kind of helps, where there was gray area before, and teachers felt a little bit between a rock and a hard place sometimes about how they should approach it. And having the clarity, back to John Almaroad, the clarity of, this is the board policy, this is the expectation. You cannot have this from the time you walk in the door until the time you walk out the door. It's very simple. And that makes it much easier when we have those conversations with the students.
I actually got an email from a student asking about the policy, and I had fun responding to him, so that was good.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
I know it's still early with the Firefly, but have you seen any improvements since we started the data program?
You want to be on the spot? I'm going to ask Mrs. Hogg to answer that question. I think the answer is yes, but I'm going to let her speak more directly to that because she's working closer with the Firefly data than I am.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to revert to the to be determined at this point. I think when we administer it next week, that will provide a lot more useful data. The first administration, there were some hiccups with DRC, and they had to work through some kinks with that because it was the first full year of them administering it. So I don't think that first set of data was reliable. So in December, we did the second administration. So I think that's the first piece of data that we have that's somewhat reliable. So we're excited for next week to see what the improvement and the growth is in those students. And we've really been working with teachers and having those conversations so the students are taking it seriously. And after they take it, they're going to meet with the students and provide those conferences so they can look at the growth or have the students take part in some self-reflections and things like that. Where are your areas of strengths and weaknesses? So it's not just, oh, you take this test, nobody talks about it, nobody looks at it. We want it to be meaningful for the students and really been working with the teachers for how to make that happen. So that's been a big focus lately, especially since the December one. In fact, I met with several teachers today working through that process. A new thing that we are implementing will be for the ELA in next week, where we're incorporating a text-dependent analysis response for the 7th and 8th grade because they're expected to do that on the PSSAs. And then the constructed response is a similar written response for anybody taking the literature keystone. So across through 7th grade or 8th grade, they're going to have the same text that they have to read and then provide a response. And then we're going to score them. Everybody's going to have the consistent rubric. We're going to meet afterward with all the teachers and kind of talk through that and really use that as a learning experience for the students with the plan of, okay, then we're going to revisit it in the summer. How can we tweak it and administer that after each Firefly assessment so it becomes part of it? And we'll upload that data into Linkit with the other data so we can really use that data set as well to see, are we providing growth? Are students making the growth? And are we preparing them to meet that eligible content that the state says that the students need to learn for each grade level? So I'm hopeful. I think it's aligned. The state is saying it is aligned to what is expected at each grade level. And I think we'll get a lot more information to be able to make that comparison after next week.
Let me add to that too, that each time we've given this Firefly, the reports that the state has made available to us are becoming increasingly detailed. The first ones were basically just an overall, did you pass, did you fail, like what proficiency level and then what overall proficiency level. We're expecting more and more information as time has gone on here. They're adding several new reports for this one that we did not have last time.
That's what they're promising, yes.
So we'll be able to, and that's really the heart of what we want to see. We want to be able to dig into it a little bit more closely and determine which areas we need to focus instruction on. I think the other piece which you mentioned, I'm just going to speak a little bit in layman's terms in case there's anyone out there that's listening that doesn't understand what a TDA is, a text-dependent analysis. The Firefly is multiple choice, period. However, state testing does require a written response, several written responses, both in math and in English language arts. And frankly, there's an extremely high correlation between kids that do okay on those responses and what their overall proficiency level is. So it's one thing to do well on the multiple choice. It's a whole nother thing if you are not able to construct that written analysis. And they're asking kids to read, digest a question, and then respond using evidence and potentially your own personal background in that response. And that is a piece that we just we've not done enough with, and finally are. And we've added that essentially as a piece of the Firefly. It doesn't go to the state for them to digest, but it is something that we will look at more closely, score together, and then put that into our data warehouse as a separate piece, but it'll be along with that. So it gives us a little more information on that end as well, which is completely new for us. So thank you for doing that. I will talk next month about eligible content and some of the steps we've taken there. I have a wonderful lasagna story that goes along with that I've been telling everyone that Brad really likes. And I know you'll be waiting on the edge of your seats for that. So anything else?
I was just going to add one anecdotal piece. This is not a big sample size, but I worked with a teacher 2 weeks ago or so, maybe it was right after Christmas break, that was trying to get some information from the Firefly for a specific student. So to Dr. Messinger's point, like they're getting more details as we go. In this particular student, we were able to look at on the first Firefly in this section, they had like a 210 or something like that. In the second Firefly, they had like a 580. So they showed growth, but it still was within that basic category of the red or the yellow, whatever it was. So we could see that there was growth there, but there wasn't, to be able to drill down and get some specifics. Well, these are the 3 areas that they grew in. They're still working on rolling some more of that out. So we could see the student made progress, but when you're just looking at 4 colors that are broken into these spans, sometimes it's not as easy to be able to tell. So hopefully as they get more details, that we'll be able to get more from that. Any other questions?
Okay, great. Thank you both. No offense, Dr. Messinger, but these school level reports are my favorite.
Well, that's good news because in February and March, over the next 3 meetings, we have about 5 more reports coming. So I'm glad you like them.
Great. All right, there is no public comment this evening, so we will move immediately to establishing our agenda for next week. So let's just move through each of them, Dr. Messinger, as you like.
Yeah, okay. 5.1 will be the approval of minutes for the January meeting. We do have a redesignation of Rachel Ingram from a day-to-day substitute to a long-term substitute. That'll be effective February 23rd. We have 3 teachers listed there that will be receiving tenure with us. It is that time. We did have a few more retirements, and those are listed there for you, along with the one that we had last month. So congratulations to those folks as they get ready to retire. We have a mentor for an aide over at the elementary school. The substitute list, which is always there. There's some coaches that were added for February that are listed for you. And that's the end of that section. Sorry. See that at the top of the next page. And we do have a change. Instead of Rebecca Scalise, who was kind enough to do the trading card game club, Brett Bixler actually wants to do the trading card game club. And so we're going to switch that and let Brett do that. So, yeah.
Great. Any questions? Any desire to move any of those items to discussion for next week? Okay. Hearing none. Budget and finance.
The first 2 are just monthly items. 6.3 is that primary care services agreement. I will say that we did get a little bit of feedback yesterday or this morning. I can't remember. From Brooke with a few suggested tweaks to it. Nothing major, but a few tweaks. We're going to make those tweaks. We're going to send them back to them to make sure those tweaks are good. They did that for another school district as well. As far as I know, that it went fine. But that will be on there. And I'll stop there. And I don't know if there's, that's what we had the presentation on, that they're going to set up the office in Lebanon, and our employees will be able to go there for healthcare services. Did anybody have any questions for Ms. Martin about that, or if you needed to move that or not?
Could you go over again the cost to the district? Are we basically breaking even on this, or?
Right, when they analyze it, they say that they tried to say it was a savings, but they basically said that they believe the employees that will go to this primary care, and use this as their primary care physician, will have better services, receive more, receiving better care, but that the savings we will have by them going there will be negated by them not going to their previous primary care physician or an urgent care. So we're hoping that it's like a neutral cost in our health insurance, it's just a redirection of it and better care for our employees. Now, the additional cost would be the mental health aspect, which would be $15 per member each month. The contract that we have here in front of us actually is better to us than what they had presented that night, because if you recall, it was going to just be the school districts. There was a higher risk to the school districts. We had to guarantee 50 members, I believe, from the first time. If you look at this, it's actually, they said, 25 eligible individuals. The fee structure here, they are feeling very confident in this. They have Cornwall, Lebanon, I believe, is moving forward this, Anvil potentially in Palmyra as well. They found a building and are moving forward with that, and I believe it was cost effective for them, so they are kind of passing some of that along to us and lowering our risk in doing this, and that's why they were able to lower it down to only having to have 25 eligible people. And also they gave us the flexibility that originally, all the schools were going to have to do the exact same thing, and we were all going to say it's only for employees. They have now changed it and said if you would like to have employees put their dependents on it, that's up to us. We can figure, if we don't have that many employees utilizing it, we can actually say, employees may take their dependents with them, and this can be their dependents' primary care as well. So it's kind of more flexible in that aspect. And then, like I said, it is $15 a month for the healthcare aspect. But if you have employees that go a few times a month, that's $15 is nothing on that compared to, a couple visits to somebody else.
And this is Brooke. If you guys want some direct data on implementation of this type of an agreement with the same entity, Manheim Township has had the program in place and a clinic on site for about a year now. So that would be a great reference for you.
Yes, Manheim, they speak very, very highly of it, their business manager. And I gave the example before, Peckway has it. Donegal has one that's off-site, similar to what we're doing, very highly speaking of it. So it's, this is something that Lancaster's been doing for a few years now in the IU13 and has given very good reviews of it. That's why Lebanon has decided, we were looking for something to do too together.
Now, I think the last time you mentioned that it was not just going to be school districts using this, that they might have other business entities being part of this as well?
Potentially, yes. I believe at this time it is just the school districts. They're hoping to get enough interest from us that they don't have to open it up to outside employers.
Is this something that teachers haven't wanted, or is this more of a administration nice to have?
It's the teachers will like this, yes. They support this, yes. When we meet healthcare wise across the district, the business managers, and they send a union representative. The union representatives were very positively for this.
Do we want to keep this on discussion for next week or consent? Any desire to move it to discussion?
I'd like to
Okay.
have
All right.
discussion. Yeah.
Great. Then we will move 6.3 to discussion. I assume 6.1 and 6.2 will be on consent unless I hear differently. So 6.3 will be on discussion. Any other questions regarding 6.3? Okay. All right, great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, 6.4 is just we use E-rate. This is for switches. For Kirk, I can't explain the technical side of things. If you want to know the technical side of things, he's here to answer questions. But we get reimbursed for a large portion of that through E-rate. We do go out to bid. I know in this particular case, there were 7 bids for this, and these were the recommended by Kirk and his crew. But it outlines there what our costs will be versus what the E-rate reimbursement will be. And this is something that will be, that Kirk will use his budget for this year. Any questions on that?
Okay, hearing none, we'll leave it on consent then.
Okay, and then Ms. Martin's going to talk a little bit about budget, and we can talk about kind of where we are, and next week be voting on where we fall from a percent standpoint. While she's getting that up, can I just interrupt for one second? I keep forgetting the substitute list. We had a substitute added today. Obviously, we're not voting until next week, so we can do that. But because it's such a minor thing, we did add that. If you'd like to move it to discussion, we can. You can always move it next week too, but there's one additional name that was not there that came in today. So I just wanted to draw that to everyone's attention.
So some of this is kind of review. I wanted to go over things again for you and also just make sure that you are understanding our fund balance and where we're at. So I'm showing that again. I know the auditors just also spoke to this. So as you can see, is kind of where we're at with our fund balance currently, including the transfer that we did over to the capital projects, leaving us about $9 million there at the bottom right-hand side. Again, this was kind of a compilation of multiple slides that I put in here together for you to see at one point, all in one slide. So if you recall, when we went over expenses, I kind of said, I called it a static expense increase, basically covering like the predicted healthcare cost, salary cost, benefit cost with PSERS, and a very small increase to everything else that we do, kind of the buildings and grounds, supplies in the classrooms, things like that. Was a 2% cost increase there, and also our bond payments, and this did include paying back on the loan that we just got. So I'm saying, just to cover those expenses to keep us going to what we've already kind of committed to with salary increases, bond payments, and just the cost of things generally going up like they do each year, we are looking at needing about another $2 million there. And then the real estate revenue, just real estate tax money goes up every year because assessed values increase, or because we have LRTAs right now that are coming on at the higher percentage, 10% each year. So just those things alone, doing nothing, not raising taxes, gets us an additional, I'm estimating $371,000. And what we do is we go budget to budget when we're doing this. So obviously last year our budget did not include the amount of state funding increase that we received. So increasing those state revenue dollars would be another $925,000 if we got flat funded for state revenue next year to what we got this year. So then it comes down to what I am saying is that we need an additional revenue just to cover the static expense increases of about $740,000. That's that bottom line there. And that's how I got to those numbers. Obviously there's a lot more going into it when we look at the budget and we prepare it and things like that. But that's our high level estimate, of where we would need to be at for next year. And then so every year we kind of tell our administrators to send us a list of things, if they could change for next year, what they would like to add, what would they need, what are they thinking will come into the play for their budget that they're in charge of. And this is what we got back. Obviously, the top one is Dr. Messinger, and I put that on because we are well aware of the CTC renovation that is being proposed. And if we want to consider doing that and building that into our budget gradually over time, a quarter of the annual bond cost, they're estimating at about $1.2 million for us, would be $300,000. So working that into our budget this year, and then do another $300,000 next year so that it's not such a big tax increase now. Obviously, that money would then be there, $300,000. We might not be paying fully on the bond yet, so we could put that over into our capital projects or direct that to where we wanted to. But building it into our budget because of the adjusted index and our inability to increase taxes that high to get all that $1.2 million into our budget in 1 year. The next thing would just be, I'm sure, I'm sorry, I'm sure you guys have seen it, the buildings and grounds, they have a list of things, you know, trucks that rotate through, equipment that needs replaced. It includes even like repairs to surfaces like the track, the parking lots, the building roofs, things like that. It's an entire list that they kind of go through. So there's always, you know, the buildings and grounds equipment that it's coming due this year, so that, you know, we're trying to build that through every year. There's some things on there that were submitted. The next necessary technology replacements, you know, there's the switches over at the high school. There's a data thing here in the elementary school that will eventually need to be replaced. And those are kind of things that we could put them off and kick them down the road eventually, but they're going to be something that needs to come due, and it's going to break, and then it's going to be a surprise in a year. So what technology and buildings and grounds does is they try to like replace things on an evenly schedule so that things are new and working and doesn't become an emergency. The other one is a new occupational and physical therapy contract is being considered, and that'll have a significant cost to the district if we switch who does that work for us. And if we switch the work to be done by the IU, we're looking at it's potentially costing us about 6 figures to make that switch. You skipped ahead of me. I'm talking about the occupational and physical therapy contracts. That's okay. No worries. But so then the other things I've listed some new positions here that the administrators have come up with us and given us to consider. One of them is it would require one more teacher if we wanted to do all-day kindergarten for all of the classes. I believe we have one class that's still half day, and that would, if we got one more teacher, it would be 7 kindergarten teachers. Is that correct? And it would cover all the classes then, so that they could all those kindergarten students could stay for a full day. Another thing that, you know, I know we've discussed a little bit here, but is to have a second police officer, you know, one that's maybe working second shift or covering the second building. Not sure exactly what that would look like, but that would definitely be an asset to the district and something that I know has been discussed. A full-time speech therapist for the district, because we are looking at potentially having to move away from our contracted one. And another reading specialist at the elementary school, a German teacher at the high school, third agricultural teacher at the high school. And then also, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the fact that we have building substitutes at both buildings. The proposal for another building substitute at the secondary level to kind of cover some of those times when we have gaps and we can't get substitutes in.
I just want to be clear, because we showed a very similar list to this last year, a lengthy list.
Yeah.
We will not say yes to all these things. We have discussions with the principals in February where they come and they talk about the rationale. Some of them were way more interested than others, I think. But anyway, we had those discussions. We know there's no way we're getting all that. Just like last year, there was no way we were gonna do all of those things. But these are the lists this is the list that was brought to us at this point before we've had the specific discussions with everyone.
Absolutely. I just wanted to let you guys know that there's other considerations for the budget besides just the static cost increase, you know. And some of these things have been on here for multiple years because they aren't something that we've moved as a top priority. So, but just putting all these things out there and letting you guys know that there are other considerations for a budget besides just those static cost increases. And I just wanted to paint the picture for you of what we kind of receive and talk back and forth and go through. Fully knowing that this is not a list that's going to all be put on the budget for next year. It's just not feasible. And again, I wanted to show you guys the impact the average homeowner and what the tax increase nets to the district. So there are the numbers anywhere from 0 to 4%. Remember that the Northern Lebanon School District's adjusted index is at 4.2% for next year. And these obviously amounts don't include that $371,000 that I said happens whether we increase taxes or not. So these numbers, you know, are what would get us, in addition to that, trying to cover that $740,000. Okay, and that's the end of my slides. So if you guys have any questions for me, and I can send these slides out to you guys as well, so I can get you these and the auditor slides.
And Leanne, did you send us the 10-year, the worksheet that you did? You
I
sent
did,
that?
yep.
Okay. Does admin have a recommendation or a request regarding the percent increase?
It's a challenge because of the CTC component to it. The CTC component at 300,000, Ms. Martin, what was the percentage?
Oh, sorry, I can bring that right back up.
Approximately
Slide.
1%.
Yeah, so 3% gets us an additional 800,000. So to do this, you're looking at about 1.5 or 1%, yeah.
Yeah. So you can look at the 700 and some thousand that we have to come up with, and then you throw in that percent for CTC, and you're already sitting at almost 4%. So that CTC factor plays a big role. I don't think it's a surprise on that 10-year that when you look at the way costs go up, that when you look at the 10-year and you start plugging in numbers, you're sitting at in order to not deplete fund balance in a very fast manner, you're sitting at about 3.5, I think, to be able to do that, right? If I remember correctly when I was playing with it. But that's, again, when you look at those costs that go up that you can't do anything about the increase with salaries, and when you hit the salaries, you're going to also increase the benefits almost automatically. And then we've been adding a 2% just because of the way utilities and just the prices and everything have climbed. Now, we are also very conservative when it comes to budgeting for state funding. Clearly this year, we were pleased, but we also, as we look to put in the grant for this year, the other issue that you have is certain things don't fit in the grant. And you were tied to specific things. You're almost tied to spending money in areas. I'm not going to say they're not valuable, but for us, we probably wouldn't choose. We might choose something else on that list that doesn't qualify over what we have to choose in order to get it into the grant. And I don't love that they do that, but that's what they do. And you can't, you can say, well, why don't you shift it from something else that we already do? Except that you can't, because they want to see new additional programs. They don't want you to be using things that you've had for 5 years. They want the things that started this year qualify for the grant. So you almost have to add things at times to get to the full amount of the amount of money that you're getting, which is, well, I'll keep my mouth shut.
Understood. Okay, thanks. All right. Questions?
In the event everybody didn't get a chance to look at the 10-year estimates that Leanne put together, would you be okay with putting that on the screen real quick? Or do you not feel comfortable doing that?
I don't know if I can.
Okay.
It's on my laptop. Should I just email it to Kurt quick? Yes.
Okay.
Let me work on that.
I just want everybody to be able to see the fund balance over time, which is why we have this 10-year projection anyway.
So while we're waiting for that, okay, so even at 4%, factoring in the CTC, would that give us the ability to add any of these wish list items that folks have come up with? Okay, all right. But certainly not all. Yeah.
And certain things take away the need for other things sometimes. One of the things too that's a factor that, you look at a second school police officer, there may be legislation that requires us to get a second school police officer. They're talking about having to have one in each building. So you start to talk about that, and you start to look at that and try to figure out how where you get that in. So some of these things that you look at, Mr. Wagner talked about the ag program, and there's growth in that ag program, and we want to continue to foster the interest that kids have in that program. So those are discussions that we have. We look at requests. We now have student requests for next year. I can think of one position that I won't say out loud that the requests don't probably warrant it, so it's going to be a pretty short discussion. But then there's others that warrant the discussion. So.
Director Klein.
All right, I just wanted everybody to have this visual aid as we look at the 26, 27 row and the column H tax increase. So right now I see 3.99% in that field. And then you take a look at our end fund balance and you can see it's 6.9 million, modestly projecting a 3.5 to 3% increases for the next X amount of years. You can see what that does to our fund balance. So I just wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to kind of see where even 3.99% gets us in, the next short amount of years.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, any other questions, discussion? All right, that will definitely be on discussion for next week, so let's come prepared.
Yeah, what we'll have to do, someone will ultimately, after the discussion, have to make a motion for a specific percent, and then we vote again until we have one that works.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you. All right, instructional approvals.
Okay, mutual aid agreement between Northern London and Derry Township. Dr. Reist, not director,
I was gonna
doctor,
say,
sorry.
Don't want
doctor.
that
Are you
job.
running?
Thank you. No, thank you. The mutual aid agreement came about, as you'll recall, years ago, when TMI was operational. We were Derry Township's relocation point, and they've come back and asked us to renew said agreement under the opening of Constellation Clean Energy at the TMI location. We took a little different approach this time, and instead of making it a one-way agreement, we made it a two-way agreement. So though the spirit is that it's written under the auspice of an emergency at the nuclear power plant, we also would then have the ability to go there for a non-nuclear type of emergency. So if you recall, a couple years back, we had you pass an MOU with the Expo Center as a relocation point. Derry Township will now be available for us, assuming that this passes next week.
Great.
We already have Derry's approval on it.
Great, okay. Great, thank you. Any questions? Okay. All right.
Okay, Lebanon County is preparing for a 250th anniversary, as are many counties across the state and country. And they have, one of the things that they've asked is for school boards to consider the resolution on the commemoration of that 250th anniversary. So that is there for you to consider as they look at many activities leading up to that celebration. Any questions on that?
Who drafted it?
The committee, that there's a very large committee with representatives, including Mr. Schlegel, representatives from all the school districts, representatives from other organizations. They meet on pretty much a monthly basis to, yeah.
Are we asked to adopt it as drafted, or is this our own resolution?
They drafted it. If you have suggestions, we can. Yeah.
I do.
Why don't you call me and talk
Okay,
to me
I
and
will.
we can discuss
I will.
those.
Okay, great. I think we can leave it on consent, but I may ask to move it to discussion.
No problem. The next two we're actually on in January as informational items for you to look over. Those are programs that are offered by both SARC and Lebanon Family Health Services. And then obviously we wanted to get them on the consent and to just give you a little extra time too. Those will be voted on next week. And then we have a calendar for next year, which is very similar to this year. We did not do the half days, but instead of the half days, we're going to utilize one of the days in October as a day-to-day, and one of the days around February, President's Day, as a day-to-day. But the calendar looks fairly similar to this year. Yeah, that's it for 7.
Okay, questions?
Can you explain a little bit as far as
Can
the
you
calendar?
just speak in your mic a little?
Yeah, you know how you had talked about we were doing hours instead of days? Can you
Yeah,
explain that again?
yeah. A couple of years ago, the state, instead of, you used to have 180 hours or, 180 days or 990 and 900 hours. It's different for secondary and elementary. It's also different for half-day kindergarten, but you had a specific amount of hours. Then, instead of the word and, they changed the word and to or, and you either have to do 180 days, and it doesn't matter how long your day is, or you have to do the hours and hit the hours. For certain school districts, there's one in the county where their days are shorter than our days are. So they really have trouble not going 180 days because they have to, in order to get to their hours, they need to be able to do the 180 days or close to it. Our days are a little bit longer, so we've been using hours, which gives us more flexibility in terms of the mental health side of things. It's building some breaks across the year now. Number one. Number two, we've built in quite a few extra professional development days, which I think we've done a good job, not great job, but we continue to get better every year of providing professional development for the teachers. Next year, we're going to have a continuation of some of the AI things that we've been working on. We are in discussion right now with John Almerode, who you got to hear about tonight from Mr. Wagner, but we've talked about it. I was talking about it when I gave my mid-year update last year, and the clarity piece about potentially and coming and speaking here at our district and providing in service for that as well. In the past, we've been very limited by the amount of days that we can do during the school year, and the hours really gives you some flexibility. We were one of the first districts to do it. However, more and more school districts, especially in Lancaster County, are going to the hours. I had an opportunity to speak about it at the IU 13, and there were quite a few questions. I think there was one other school district that went to it almost immediately. That was also there, at least that was there that day, that was able to speak to it as well. Which had very similar positives to it. But yes, it has to be, it's now an or, it used to be an and.
Okay, so do you think we're having less days now because we're hitting that amount of hours in?
We're hitting, we're still over the hours. I still have a buffer in there, just to make sure, in case we have a blizzard.
Okay.
If what happened the other week, Sunday would have happened on a school day, that would have at least been a 2-day, kind of thing. Maybe even 3, who knows? But we're over and have a buffer, and then if we needed to, we can always do virtual days as well. Yeah.
And one of the reasons I ask is we're going to hit in this later the one policy about attendance, and I was just wondering if there's any wiggle room to change some of the attendance policies. I mean, this is just in my case, my experience with having to need over 10 days for a student for absences. And some of our policies were like, if it was like a college visit, you need like a 2-week. I was wondering if we can visit some of that policy.
Yeah, some of that's more
I had a
procedural
student
in
here.
nature and in the handbook. Some of it, I mean, there are things in the policy. I don't recall off the top of my head the specifics about the notification of a and maybe Director Nam or Dr. Reese have a better memory than I do, but the number of days to notify for a college visit, I believe, would be more of a handbook type of thing. Do you see it in there at all?
I'm looking now. I think it may.
Then it's
Yeah, I
also,
will look.
I remember, like, if you were over 10 days, even if there were all college visits or sports related or whatever, and you hit that 10-day, then it's like, you need a doctor's note. Well, what if you're not sick and you need to, it's just kind of, it was just kind of complicated. I don't know if maybe we can revisit that a little bit.
It's an administrative regulation. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's delegated to that under the policy, both our
Why
current
don't-
policy and our draft
Well,
policy.
why don't we move it to discussion, and if you send me the questions, then I
Okay.
can.
And I'm thinking more like junior, seniors, that, the secondary,
Sure.
high school, that might. be
Yeah,
more
send me your
specific.
thoughts, and then
Okay.
I'll prepare for next week, and we'll move it to discussion.
Okay.
The main change with the attendance policy, to be truthful, was more about the new law about habitually truant students who may no longer transfer in the middle of a year to a cyber school. And so in order to be correct with the law, we needed to change that in the policy. So that was the big reason for examining the attendance policy. I mean, some of these are just smaller things that we've already done and revisited these policies, but now then changes to the law come up and you go back and you kind of, you just, it's a constant spiral. But the attendance one was specific, and it was about the truant students. And we do need to add that piece of it, but there might be other questions that
Yeah, I was
we,
just
if it's in an admin regulation, then I can change that at any point in time. If it is if it's in the policy, then we can discuss.
So the maximum number of parental notices of absence is specified in the policy. We would have to check to see if that's specified in the code, but it is specified in the policy. I think it's just policy.
It's not in the code. So the code defines like what is habitually truant, and that's where that 10 days comes from. It's for districts to establish how absences are counted and being legal, illegal, or excused.
And is
Great.
there a certain age? I think it didn't mention the age in there. Like once you're 18, I mean, are you
Yes.
by
Compuls-
law still come to school once you hit 18? I mean,
Yep. Compulsory attendance enforcement stops, of course, when someone's age 18.
Yeah, send me the questions.
Okay, yeah, I just had a few.
I'll try to type up some responses and get them out to the board, and then we can discuss them
Okay.
next week.
Dr. Reese, did you have something?
I just wanted to mention, while we're still on the calendar, there'll be, I believe, some editorial changes just to the definition of days. Some of the days that are listed as teacher in service will be all staff in service days. Just something to look for next week. It's not going to change student days off. It's just going to change what a work day is considered for some of
Yeah.
our non-teaching staff.
Yeah, thank you. There was wanted to make a clarification because some of the professional development days are designed specifically for teachers. Some of the professional development days we run training for staff. So we're going to just tweak those days on the legend on the side so that they know which ones are for all staff and which ones are for just the teachers. That won't change the days at all.
Okay, good. Any other questions?
I just have, along the same lines as Director Blau was talking about, was there a change in the way that days are accrued when a child misses class or when a child misses a day? Like, are they looked at differently versus like an educational day versus like if they're taking a trip or?
No, I
Was
don't
there-
believe so.
Okay.
To be truthful, Dr. Reese and I have talked about this multiple times because Northern Lebanon's policies on it have always been slightly different than things I've seen.
Okay.
And we've had some discussions. There's a variety of philosophies to it. Some of the questions that you might have or the Director Blau might have, I might go, and I will say it's probably more consideration at the high school than it is at elementary school. Those tend to be a little more straightforward. So I may sit with high school administration as well and get their opinions, and certainly Dr. Reese was over in the middle school and get his opinion. I don't think other than anything we've had to change from a law standpoint, I don't think we've
That's
actually.
what I was wondering, if there was
No,
changes,
they
no?
didn't touch on those things
Okay,
necessarily, no.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing changed in the law relative to what you count. The law still remains about what is considered habitually truant. The big changes were related to cyber charters.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are we keeping all of item 7 on consent for now? Is there any desire to move any of those items to discussion? I didn't hear anything, but I just want to confirm. Okay, then we will leave those items on consent and we'll move to policy.
Yeah, there's 5 policies. We already know we want to move attendance to discussion. Fine with moving any of them, obviously. Some of them were very minor in nature, but all of them had some update that we took care of. You can see too where it's listed there, it says Policy 102, Volume 4, 2025. You can see where the changes came from PSBA. That's the year that PSBA sent us a revision for us to look at. So you can see that anything that we changed in there was due to a recent PSBA update.
Okay. Great. Okay, so we will move.
Take what off? Well, I'd like to see what the questions are. If there's too many questions to answer, we've got to make that habitually. I'd rather pass it and then change it and pass it again. I think we have to make this habitually truant changes,
that makes
in
sense.
my
Okay.
opinion. Brooke, do you have the discussion was, do we table it and come back at a later date? But I feel like the habitually truant, we've already made changes to our attendance letters. Do you agree that that's probably the best way to move forward if we can't?
100%, because the law has changed and you want the capacity to enforce that because it impacts what cyber charter students are permitted, or what students are permitted to enroll in a cyber charter, and whether you have to pay for them after they've been habitually truant. So it is a
We've
big
already had,
yeah.
go ahead. We've
It's-
already had 2 that fall into this category.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. You want to maintain that control because ultimately what happens is students will leave the school district, continue to be habitually truant, and then you are paying for them to attend a cyber charter. This is the one piece of sort of like filter teeth that we have right now. So I strongly encourage you to have it in policy because I do think cyber charter schools are looking for opportunities to try to bend that rule.
Great. Okay, then we will move policy 204 to discussion. We'll leave the other policies on consent unless anyone wants to discuss another policy. Let us know this
The
week.
other one about the extracurricular, it was just minor, but you know how some of our policies say like this is absolutely the way we have to do it. I was wondering if there's more wiggle room as far as, well, I was saying like
Which policy? I'm sorry, Director Bala.
extracurricular activities. I think it
122.
says like they
Okay.
have to have a certain grade, they have to be there that day. Like, is there a way to put a clause in there unless there's an exception, we have a superintendent's approval for some extenuating circumstance? Like, I just remember for my own example, my boss's son he wasn't allowed to play soccer one time last year because he had gotten a 0 because his teacher hadn't, he had a D because he had a 0 somewhere in there because they hadn't graded something and he was like out sick or on vacation. So like like just, if there's a weird extenuating circumstance for a grade or something, is there any way that you can say,
and we've
if upon approval of such and such a person that?
And I think that also is probably more under either an admin reg or a procedure in the handbook. But we have had some of that, and we have made exceptions for some of that. And I'm not saying that we don't sometimes, it slips through the cracks, or somebody's told they can't play and they don't, and we don't get the specifics. You know, I'm a step removed from probably that on a daily basis, but occasionally it's been brought to my attention and we've had certain discussions about certain things. We made a change not too long ago where we don't look at grade ineligibility for the first 2 weeks of a quarter. 2 weeks? Does that sound right? 2 weeks of a quarter, because what was happening before was you could be one day into the quarter and somebody not do well on a 5-question quiz, and they get a 2, and now all of a sudden their percentage puts them failing the class. And so we felt like that was not fair to, 2 days in, take a very, and be ineligible. So we did change that. So now you have to be 2 weeks in, so there's multiple grades. So if you do have a poor grade, you're not ineligible immediately as the quarter changes. But again, let me look at we can move it over. Let me look at, I'm guessing that that's more procedural in nature than, and you're looking at it. Do you see that in the policy necessarily? It says about the requirements, but it doesn't specify what the requirements are.
Right, it says met the requirements for academic eligibility, but we do not specify in here.
Well, I think we have to be careful because if I understand the issue correctly, I believe that's covered under policy 123, not 122.
Eligibility?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think in the terms of athletics, it would be under 123.
Well, and there's some PIAA regulations
Right,
too.
which is why I'm thinking the concern that's being raised would be covered under 123, not the 122.
I think you might be right, as well as I think often we see like sporting handbooks or codes of conduct that outline those principles. I've had districts have to apply that, and it's kind of the form of an administrative regulation.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So this, as it is, can't be changed. Is that what you're saying? We'd have to
Let me
change it
clarify.
when policy
I think what we're saying is that policy 122 may not be responsive to your question. Changing policy 122 may not be responsive to your specific question. That's more of an athletic
So it's more
policy.
related to policy 120. Well, it's not some even athletic. I mean, it also says like if they're not there that day, like what if you had a college visit and then you had a game that night or something like that? I just always thought there's always good to have an exception to something.
I'd say the same process. We move it to discussion. Send me your question because just makes it easier to make sure I've addressed, I've looked thoroughly into the specific question. And then I'll share what we find out and take a look at PIAA regulations versus our admin regs versus our handbook versus policy 123.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so 122 and 204 will be on discussion. Great. Okay, Dr. Messner, anything else? We have dates to remember.
Yeah, that's it for tonight.
Okay. Anything else from the board? Okay, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. We'll see you next week.